Welcome back to Notorious Autosports. On today's episode, we are working on the infamous project's DECH number 5. We're going to get this car ready to go to Foxtoberfest, do some finishing touches, and do a full suspension revamp as well. Springs, shocks, struts, we got some Coney goodies, specially valved, 4 DECH, and a brand new Flowmaster exhaust. Stay tuned, it's going to be a good time.
Yeah.
Alright, so back on DECH number 5. It's been a while since I worked on this car. I've done a little bit with a kind of reassembly with Infamous, but kind of minimal compared to the last time I worked on it, which was actually the day we took it to the Sick Kids car show. Drove it there and back, and as soon as we got back, 4 of us attacked this car and literally stripped it down to nothing. It was a lot of fun. It was good to hang out with friends, have multiple sets of hands tearing things apart, and get it ready to go off to the paint shop. Everything got done that way, and then when I came back, Infamous did all the reassembly. We're just gonna change a couple things, do a couple finishing touches, paint these calipers up. I've actually got some really nice DECH springs to go back in this thing that are the later style than this, so they are a heavier spring rate on the front. He had some KYBs that he just put in temporarily. We actually got some Coney yellows and Coney red quad shocks because they do not make a yellow quad shock. And they were sent away, custom ordered through DECH with their original valving that they used back in the day. So I'm gonna get those put in. I've got a couple other things. I've got the other Simmons wheel that I did the reseal on a little while ago. I don't know if you guys saw that video. If not, I will throw a little tidbit up here where I actually stripped the whole center of the wheel down where it is mated together. And then resealed it. So we got to get this donut off, get that wheel back on, and then I have a full Flowmaster Flow FX stainless exhaust to go on this thing, as it does not have a catback right now. There's our Coney yellows, those nice new quad shocks, and that nice set of DECH springs. So we're gonna get stuck into that, and then there is a little bit of other list that I will have to refer back to, refresh my memory, and figure out what all we got to get done on this thing. But I've got basically a day and a half. It is Wednesday, about midday, and this car has to be on a trailer on Friday to be trailered out of town. It's going back to the body shop just for a couple little touch-ups, and then it is on its way to Foxtoberfest in North Carolina, and then after that, the Mustang Owners Museum. So Infamous will never actually even get to see this car until it arrives at Foxtoberfest. So I've got to try and get everything finished up that he wasn't able to get to. There is a clutch cable to go into this car too. As you saw me pulling in, it might have been a little not as smooth as normal, and that is because this is an adjustable cable, and it is it got put in, it got adjusted, and then it stretched, and it's way out of adjustment. So essentially there is almost no clutch on this car. So I'm gonna go back to a stock non-adjustable cable. This has the stock quadrant in it, so it'll just be a lot simpler, easier, and that stock quadrant is self-adjusting, so as that cable stretches, it just works. They don't give any problems. Unless you have an old, brittle plastic quadrant, you'll be fine. They work great. If you're running a super, super heavy clutch, that can be one of the downfalls of the stock quadrant, but if you're a fairly stock or center force or something like that, you'll be great, and it'll just make your life a lot easier. So I'm gonna dig through my parts and just refresh myself on everything that I have to address here. And then we're gonna get into some of this stuff, disassemble this rear suspension and get these calipers painted up, and then get into the clutch cable and the exhaust. So we've got car up in the air, got the rear shocks undone here, and I did actually disconnect part of the ASG as well, just to allow for a little more flexing of the rear axle. Got a jack post under the far side, under the lower control arm bracket, right on the actual grabber. And I'm going to lower the car, which is going to lift up that side, apply pressure to that spring, and then it'll actually unload this side so I can pry the spring out and get the nice clean one in. So we got this unloaded as far as I can. Still be aware, it could be under tension. Safety glass is always a great idea. You are prying a spring out, so just be mindful. Watch your fingers, your eyes. This one doesn't seem too bad, but the fronts can be quite a bit worse. That one came out quite nicely, actually. Got our nice clean one. This is actually the later version with the 2494. So this is some of the SN springs that DECH made, and they'd be near some of the last ones that they did. They did go up to about 01 for production of items, but I don't know how much later. Infamous may remember, just from speaking with Derek. Had the conversation with him about these springs being manufactured, and they had their custom spring rates specified. And there was actually only about 3 companies in the world that manufactured coil springs at the time. So you've got all your different companies or brands of springs, but a lot of them are all made in the same factories and just made to custom specs as to what that company would like. We're gonna get this stuck in here. Isolators stayed in the top there, and I do have my lower isolator there as well. I'm just trying to get this in there, and typically I like to have this tail on the inside, so you've got this is resting along the back edge there towards the axle tube. All right, raise up the car, we'll put some tension on that spring. And then once we actually get some pressure on this, it'll kind of seat it a little bit. It is resting just against the axle tube on the second coil there, nothing to worry about. Got these brakes pulled apart, just a little touch up on the calipers, just clean them up because they were never painted. So just gonna reassemble that, and then we will get onto shocks and quad shocks. So we had our lower shocks disconnected already, doing the spring swap, so now's the perfect time to actually change the shocks themselves. Got our access panels that Mr. Infamous actually already left removed there, because he knew that at some point we'd be getting these conies in. So got our panel off. You just lift up the flap there in the insulation, and then we got our 15 millimeter. Reach under, hold the top of the shock body, and loosen them off. Nice and easy. It's one of the joys of working on Fox bodies is some of these things are just actually really quite convenient to work on. One shock removed, ready to put one of those nice Coney yellows in. So we've got our new Coney yellow here, and it is adjustable on the top, so we'll probably just set that in the center setting for now. You get your bag of hardware and your adjuster dial as well. Got a couple bushings, a couple washers. So you'll want to install a washer on the bottom. They are both the same. Then we get one bushing. Always make sure to have the side that has the little step in. That's what's actually going to go in the opening in the shock tower. And then we'll do one bushing, a washer, and a nut on the top side. And they are a different size, so we will have to grab a different socket. Now, if you look at these KYB instructions, they do have a little bit of a diagram here, and it explains why they give you a pair of nuts to go on the top. So you're gonna have your sheet metal in here in between your bushings, and then your top washer, and then you're gonna have your traditional nut on the top. What they want you to do is tighten this down enough so that it compresses those bushings but does not completely squish them out. Basically bring it down enough that you can get this one on top and have it fully covering the threads. So if you look down on the very bottom, on the left-hand side, it shows don't completely just collapse those bushings. They'll probably last a lot longer if you don't. And there's no worries of anything backing off when they give you a second nut to lock the threads with. Same idea, just hold the top of the shock body. Wind that down, basically until it bottoms out. Seems to be as far as it needs to go to allow for the second one on there. Yeah, you may have to try and fit a wrench in there to hold the bottom nut while trying to snug up that top one, just so you actually get them to actually lock out on each other and not continue to spin. And other than that, bottom bolt goes in. Set the adjusters in the middle, which you can do once you have the nuts tightened down. There is enough exposed, so these actually have 2 rotations worth of adjustment. Right now we're going to back it all the way off. Looks like it was cranked all the way up, and then basically set yourself a spot that's a reference point. So just look at the way the lettering is, tighten it up, 1 rotation. If we go 1 more, then it's all the way bottomed out. So just back it off till it's in the middle, and we're good to go. It's as simple as that. And remove your staples from your factory carpet because they're really sharp and they poke you when you're trying to work in there. All right, quad shocks. This is really about as simple as it gets. They are the exact same as removal or factory install. First step for install, anti-seize. Use your anti-seize. It'll make them coming apart later a lot easier on the threads, on the smooth portion of the stud, and then on the bolt that goes into the axle bracket. So we have our Coney reds here, and I'm gonna run these in the flipped position for now. We should not have any issues on this car anyways, even if they were in this factory location or orientation, as the wheels and tires are quite narrow, but we will do that. I am going to compress this a bit, get this bolt to line up, and then we will get this installed. There we are. Just have to work this bolt in a little bit. You may have to tap it in with a hammer as well, and then we'll just get everything tightened down. There we have it, quad shocks installed. Now onto the front. All right, we are going to disassemble the front brakes, front suspension, install the new DECH springs and Coney yellows, Already got new sway bar links in here, sway bar bushings, so that is all taken care of. Will also come apart nice and easy. We have these Willwood brakes, which DECH used back in the day on these non-Willwood style ones that DECH did. They actually used a Corvette caliper as well, and used instead of a tapered roller bearing type rotor and hub assembly, they would actually machine the disc off of the factory Mustang rotor and make it into a hub, then be able to use that two-piece rotor setup and the Corvette calipers. So not sure if you guys have seen a little bit of that. Infamous had a little bit of info on that. Something a little different, ingenuitive back in the day. You're talking 30 years ago. And just something that was really cool back in the early days of Fox bodies when nobody had a rotor over hub conversion for these yet. I'm gonna get this apart, undo this strut here, and then place a transmission jack under the spring before taking out the second bolt on this strut, as these springs do carry a lot of energy. Also gonna undo this sway bar link and tie rod end here. When you get bolts that won't come out, just grab a bigger tool. Don't ask, tell it to come apart. This one might not fit in there too well though. That's the only challenge. It's significantly larger. With ease. Thank you, Milwaukee. Got these spacers between the caliper and our bracket here. We've got our custom bracket in here, and then these spacers go on behind, and the caliper goes against that, and then your bolt through. A little bit of a different design. Again, these are a Willwood hub, and I believe they are a Willwood flange. This is a stock spindle, and just actually cut down to clear the Willwood caliper. Handy tip, if you pull the sway bar up, just spin the nut on the bottom, and that way you don't have to pick up all the pieces that will instantly fall to the floor. Also, I was going to mention it, and I forgot. I should have done it. Tie up your calipers. There's a couple holes up here that make things easier, and that way you don't have any tension on your hoses. These are braided stainless hoses, much more durable, but on your brittle rubber hoses that have been on there forever, they're a lot more susceptible to getting damaged. So quick and easy. I'm just going to grab a hook and tie that up. All right, that is sorted. Apply some tension, pressure to the bottom of this control arm, and as you can see, the bolt falls right out. Now we can lower the jack there. Spring is going to push the control arm down. These ones aren't too bad. Some designs, the spring is very susceptible to actually launching itself out. What you can do is actually take a screwdriver and drop it down between the coils and the opening in the pocket there, and that will keep it from wanting to kick as much there. This one, it's actually going to lower down easy enough that we can just remove it by hand. There we go. As you can see, still had a little bit of a tight spot there, but nothing too crazy. We're going to clean up any dirt and debris that's laying in the bottom here. And then we got our new DECH spring, the later non-speed drive springs. We're going to get the top seated, line up the bottom, the end going in the opening in the pocket, and then really pretty straightforward. Reverse that procedure to install. I'm going to put a bit of tension on it just to hold it in there, and then undo the top of this strut so we can get our Coney yellow in there. One of the advantages of being tall, don't even need to raise and lower the lift. Something to be mindful of. Different struts have different opening widths here. Sometimes you will need shims. These ones were actually loose on here as far as the width. We knew that we were going to be running the Conies, so weren't worried about it. The car never made it on the road, but just be mindful if you are installing and there is a gap there, make sure you get the correct shims. If you wanted to fiddle with washers, you potentially could, but they do actually make plates that basically look like this and have openings in them that you can slide them in there, or they just have holes in them and you can hold them in there as you're pressing it on. Once you get the bolt in, it's going to keep it in place, makes things a lot easier. So we got our custom valve Coney yellow here, and I'm just going to install it in the upper mount, just enough to be able to get the nut on it, which will allow us to not have to compress the strut as much to get the lower bolts in. Makes it a little easier there. A little tight having everything here lined up. There we are. Also, undoing just the top nut on the shaft of the strut allows you to not have to undo the mount, which means you don't have to fiddle with a whole bunch of alignment afterwards. Everything's going to be in the same position. If you are doing a spring swap from, say, stock to a lowered spring, then I would recommend doing an alignment, but on something like this, we're going to have pretty much the same ride height and not have to worry about that. Again, this is going to the show. We might have to worry about certain things like an alignment afterwards, as I don't believe this one had one done after it got reassembled anyways. Another tip that I have found very beneficial over the years, when you're actually trying to compress one of these lower control arms, try and get it underneath the ball joint or as far out as you can. Gives you a lot more leverage. If you're in the middle point of the control arm, a lot of the times when you apply the pressure, it's not actually going to get the same lift out of it, and you're going to struggle a lot more to get everything lined up and tightened up. We are tight. When you are tightening those nuts too, especially with the nylock in there for the upper part, you're going to have to actually keep this shaft from spinning. If it's something where you're removing and you don't care about it, go ahead, use a pair of vice grips, anything like that. Channel locks, vice grips do work best. When you're assembling though, you do not want to do that. If you mar that shaft, as soon as it goes through compression and rebound, it will actually tear the seal inside that strut and destroy it. So it's best just to actually, well, the rubber grip or nitro grip on the gloves does help. Just grab a hold of that and snug it up, and you'll be good to go. That is one complete front suspension swap. Wheels go back on. We've got that nice repaired right front that's not going to leak anymore when I resealed it in between the two halves of the barrel. And then we're going to go over this thing, see if there's anything else that stands out other than the exhaust and the clutch cable, which I am actually still waiting on the clutch cable to arrive. It was supposed to be here a couple days ago. Doesn't look like it made it yet, so we might be doing that exhaust tonight, and then tomorrow come back in, get that clutch cable done, and the list is dwindling, so we're doing good. All right, guys, I'm gonna stop this video here for this week. I unfortunately got a whole lot more content than originally anticipated. This job took a lot longer. There was more surprises that came up, and you guys will be able to see that on the next episode. So be sure to stay tuned. Hit that notification bell so that you'll see when that next video comes up. And feel free, if you enjoyed this, to subscribe. I hope you guys learned some today, and I will see you next time. The entire car shakes as soon as it comes up off of idle. No bueno.